Hey guys, welcome to the Pirates podcast to be named later. My name is Chris Halicke. Joining me as always is José Negron on Pirates offense. Is it happening? Is it actually happening, Jose? Jose, when did this happen exactly? Of the Pirates actually making moves?
The timing was impeccable, Chris. Just absolutely unbelievable. The timing in which the Pirates decide, you know what, we're going to go out and we're going to get some proven bats. We're going to go out and we're going to actually start executing the plan right when Jose goes on vacation.
It's like Ben Cherington knew. Okay, we're getting close on this, but I'm going to hold off just for a couple days because I know Jose is leaving for Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll do it that day. We'll acquire Brandon Lowe that day. So that was the first move that happened literally the day that you went on vacation. I'm actually no, that was the next one. So yeah, Pirates acquire Brandon Lowe in a 3-team trade. They also got, it wasn't just Brandon Lowe, but there were a couple of other players in that trade, and we can get into that too. I'll let you expand on that because you're a little bit more plugged in on that side of things. But obviously getting Brandon Lowe, we talked about this. We talked like literally the last show we did. We knew we were going to be taking a hiatus with the week of Christmas and everything. Like here we are. Like they got to get something done. They've got to add. And it finally happened. I mean, they now Brandon Lowe, not Kyle Schwarber or Pete Alonso, but at least a step in the right direction of getting a proven bat in this lineup. Walk us through the trade, not just your own, dealing with covering that and also traveling, but just the trade itself.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, and obviously, we discussed kind of what was going to be next, what was going to be that first move that really moved the needle for this team. We knew that there's 2-3 bats needed in order to improve this offense. And I think we mentioned that, hey, a Brandon Lowe trade makes sense to be like the first thing to show free agents, hey, we're willing to improve this team enough to potentially make a playoff push in 2026. We have the pitching staff to do it, led by the best pitcher in the world. We have to show it. We have to prove something to our fan base. We have to prove something to guys who want to come in and join our franchise. And this is a great first step. I mean, you get a guy in Brandon Lowe who he's only signed through 2026. I think owed $11.5 million for the 2026 season. You could talk about extension, whatever the case may be, I think down the line, but it's worth it. Considering what they gave up, the fact that they only gave up Mike Burrows.
I mean, that was the only piece they gave up to get Lowe, and who else did they get in that trade? Because it wasn't just Brandon Lowe.
Right. It was Jake Mangum, who had a solid rookie season this past year for the Tampa Bay Rays. A guy who I think he's more of a depth piece, but I wouldn't say that he was completely out of the question to potentially be a starter and be a regular guy for this team. Just based on what he can do, he can hit for average. He brings a speed element that they really don't have aside from O'Neal Cruz. 27 stolen bases this past season.
That's good defense too.
And what he's able to do defensively as well is very solid. So I think that he's a type of guy who you can look at this trade, and obviously Brandon Lowe is the big headliner, but people were saying that they're more excited for Jake Mangum than anybody else in this deal. And I wouldn't say that they're crazy to think that.
All right. So here's the thing on Jake Mangum. Okay. Here are the numbers he's put up. Now he was a 29-year-old rookie, which is, those are not common.
Yeah.
Right. But 405 at-bats. He batted .296. Now, his OPS was .698, so there was just no slug. I mean, he hit 3 home runs. But 40 RBIs, he stole 27 bases. Like, in 118 games. I will take that.
Yes.
He only got caught stealing 6 times. And he had a 1.6 B WAR. Now, when I think about ideally, if he is a starter, if you are thinking of him potentially in a spot in the lineup, he's kind of the perfect guy in today's day and age to help turn the lineup over. He's your 9-hitter.
Yeah.
Because he's going to put the ball in play. And no, he's not usually going to hit for power. But when you talk about a guy who can at least, you got 9-1-2 coming up, in the order. When you're in that spot in the game, you have 9-1-2, you have 8-9-1. You have a guy who's in the 9 hole that can help turn the lineup over, who can then turn it over to the bats who are supposed to be making who you pay the big bucks to. And big bucks is funny that we're talking about because it's the Pirates, but you know what, you understand what I'm saying. That's a valuable piece to have, and even if he's not that, it's still a good fourth outfielder. Again, a fourth outfielder who can play defense, and he's not an embarrassment with the bat in his hands.
Yeah,
that's the other part of it too, because sometimes like I can even remember some championship teams, or at least borderline championship teams in years past, in which their fourth outfielder or they're like the 25th or 26th guy on their roster was like just a defensive guru. Like he was great defensively, but he couldn't do a thing with a bat in his hand. That's not what this is. He can at least do something at the plate. Yeah. So I'll take that, especially when you talk about if he turns into even a decent type of that type of player, and Brandon Lowe is also mashing homers into the Allegheny. All right, I can get on board with that.
Yeah, and especially, you look at it, and I like what Randy Duncan says here. Jake has enthusiasm. I like watching him play. Mangum plays with his hair on fire. He's a guy who plays with energy. He's a guy who, the way that this team needs to play baseball, in terms of stealing bases, in terms of, bunting guys over, playing small ball at times. You don't have to hit home runs to score runs. The issue is the Pirates just couldn't score runs at all last year.
In general, it didn't matter if they were hitting homers. Yeah, they couldn't do it.
Right. They couldn't play the brand of baseball that they really need to play. And Jake Mangum's the type of guy, like you said, he could be your 9-hitter. Exactly what they wanted out of Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, and they wanted to get out of him as a 9-hitter. Jake Mangum can do that. He can produce as a guy who can, bring the order back to the top.
Oh, IKF. IKF. So I remember having a conversation, or at least asking Don Kelly about it last year. I remember the game specifically, and I don't remember exactly how I brought the question up, because there's been a lot of things that have happened since then, including a really, really terrible Steelers game in Cleveland yesterday. But yeah, it was something about how much pride or emphasis goes into, okay, listen, you guys aren't a power hitting team. You don't hit a lot of home runs. You're not built to hit a lot of home runs. But then what is there to be said about a baseball team that can just be a pain in the butt for 27 outs? By the time that game's over, whether you won or you lost, the other team is going, man, those were the 27 hardest outs we had to get.
Yeah.
That still, to through all of the analytics, through all of the changes in strategy to how lineups are built and how teams are run, I still believe that there is a place in this game for that brand of baseball, because you can play that brand of baseball, excuse me, and still hit home runs. Mm-hmm. You can still play a more modern style of baseball, but it's, routine grounder to shortstop is no routine grounder, because we're going to be busting it down the first base line, and we're going to make it not so easy on you.
Right.
Just something where by the time when the other team, or when the game is over, the other team's just man, those are the 27 hardest outs we ever had to get. And I do think that Mangum helps fit in that mold, and that might be what the Pirates want to do. And if they're not going to be a team that mashes a whole bunch of homers and is top 10 or top 5 in Major League Baseball in home runs, then you got to do something really well. And that could be what they do. And I think Mangum fits that really well. I thought that was a really nice extra piece to get, especially when you do consider it, because, there are going to be some people who are upset about giving up Mike Burrows. I get it. I understand it. The potential for him to turn into a legitimate starter in the big leagues is it's very, very relevant. Like that can still happen, especially since he's going to Houston, and Houston has turned a lot of good young pitchers into legitimate pitchers. So
with the help of the Pirates' new pitching coach.
It's kind of funny how
it just all works. Yeah.
It is really crazy. Funny. It is really funny.
But exactly what you just explained in terms of being like just a pain to play against. I immediately think of the Milwaukee Brewers. Like,
yeah.
Playing a team like that is just. They finished 22nd in baseball in home runs last year. Like, they weren't a home run hitting team. Like, you look at some of the guys in that lineup with, like, Caleb Durbin and Sal Frelick. And, I mean, they have some power guys. Yelich can hit for some power. Churio can hit for power. But, like, they're not the most, like, deadly team in terms of, hitting the ball over the fence. But they're just so good in terms of just what each guy brings to the table offensively. And I think if you look at what the Pirates have done here, they get a guy in Brandon Lowe who's coming off a 31 home run season. I think he had 39 home runs a couple years ago. He can drive in runs. He can be that middle of the lineup presence that you need. A guy who maybe instills a little fear. We've talked about that before too. Having some guys that are going to instill some fear in opposing pitchers in the middle of the lineup. Brandon Lowe fits into that mold. Jake Mangum's a guy who can hit, top, bottom of the order, whatever you want him to do. Especially, and if they fill the hole over third base, that's another potential bat that you can get in there, and we can discuss that, going forward too. But like this deal, and we didn't even talk about Mason Montgomery. Being able to bring him in is pretty significant too.
Yeah, for sure. But it wasn't just Brandon Lowe that the Pirates got. And so there was another move that was made. But we will take a break. And then when we come back, we will get into this other move that was made, because Brandon Lowe is not the only proven bat that the Pirates added to the lineup over since the last time that we met here. So we'll take a break. We'll be right back to talk about that move right after this.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Welcome back to the Pirates podcast, to be named later. Chris Halicke, José Negron here, and the streak is over, guys. Ivan Nova no longer in the conversation for the most recent Pirates player that the Pirates signed to a multi-year contract, because this past Tuesday, Christmas Eve, or last Tuesday, so yeah, it was 6 days ago.
Yep.
The Pirates signed Ryan O'Hearn, first baseman, left-handed hitting first baseman Ryan O'Hearn, to a 2-year, $29 million contract. Once again, you were on vacation. I was actually in Toronto getting ready to cover Penguins Maple Leafs and see that it's see some stuff. Okay, this might be happening. So I reach out in the organization and I'm like trying to confirm, and I get it confirmed. And as I get it confirmed, you've already got it on the site. So yeah. There it is. Pirates sign Ryan O'Hearn. Now, we talked about O'Hearn a little bit on here. I was a bit concerned about the potential of getting O'Hearn because you already have a left-handed hitting first baseman on the roster in Spencer Horwitz. Right. Now, O'Hearn is a better hitter. There's no doubt about that. But I'm just curious, like, Horwitz is already one of your established, like, of your existing hitters. He was one of the few that were like above league average. And those were coming at a premium, and I'm like, I don't want to necessarily discard them.
Right.
So how does this fit? How does Ryan O'Hearn fit into this lineup? Is he DHing a lot, or are they going to move Horwitz around? Is O'Hearn definitely playing first base, or is he going to play in the outfield? Like, how does he fit into this?
Yeah, I think that's to be determined during spring training, but in my mind, it makes most sense for him to be their regular DH. And that's more so, I think he's capable of playing first. Obviously, he's capable of playing right field too. He has experience at both of those positions. I think for me, it's more so not exactly liking Spencer Horwitz at some of those other positions as much. Horwitz looked pretty solid over at first base last season. I like keeping him there and having O'Hearn slide in to play first when a left-handed pitcher is on the mound, because Ryan O'Hearn can hit lefties. And that's, I think, a big plus, a left-handed bat who can hit lefties. So when Horwitz sits against left-handed pitchers, O'Hearn goes over to first base, and you kind of, figure everything else out in terms of who goes into the DH spot, things like that. So to me, O'Hearn makes the most sense as your regular DH. Maybe give him a few starts in right field if you want to. But I think they can kind of figure that out during spring training, see what works. Because now with these acquisitions, they have some questions to answer during spring training. Like, Nick Gonzalez, for instance, with Brandon Lowe coming in. Brandon Lowe is going to very likely be the starting second baseman. So, does Nick Gonzalez shift over to shortstop? How do you kind of view him, look going forward? So, for me, O'Hearn is just he's made the most sense out of really any free agent this offseason. And, I heard his name probably more than any other during the winter meetings. Like, there was, huge interest there. When it came to a multi-year deal, I thought that he made the most sense for that too. Signs for 2 years, $29 million, gave me the opportunity to type out Ivan Nova and John Jaso's name in a story. So thank you to Ryan Howard on that one and the Pirates. To be able to sign a guy to a multi-year deal, get a player like O'Hearn, pretty solid addition.
Yeah, for sure. And now, like last year, O'Hearn split between Baltimore and San Diego. O'Hearn played 75 games at first base, 50 at DH, and 23 in the outfield. So that though, not just glued to one spot, which helps for sure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I do think with the flexibility there, no, you don't want him as your everyday right fielder. But the fact that he can play first, like you said, if it's a day where you're facing a really tough lefty and you just don't trust Horwitz out there, you can put you can put O'Hearn at first base. You can put a right-handed bat in the DH slot, something along those lines. But going forward now, it's okay. Well, what's the next step? Because now I look at around the diamond. I look at O'Hearn. I look at Lau. I look at Brian Reynolds. And I'm like, there's a third of your lineup with proven hitters. Now I understand Reynolds is not coming off the greatest year for him, but now with some other bats in the lineup, I feel a little bit better about his potential for 2026. So that's a third of your lineup. That's kind of okay. You got your proven hitters. Then you got O'Neal Cruz, who's a bit of a wild card. Maybe he'll be better with some better bats in the lineup. And then from there, it's kind of like, okay, well, what's left? Relying on Henry Davis to give you some offense, I wouldn't like to trust that. Nick Gonzalez or Jared Triolo, again, Nick Gonzalez, I think he does some good things with the bat, but it's not quite the impact bat you want in your lineup. And so I'm looking around and I'm like, okay, well, what else is there? Could you entertain the idea now that you've signed Ryan O'Hearn, and if the majority of the games at DH are reserved for O'Hearn, do you still entertain bringing back Andrew McCutchen? Do you continue to look at, like, near the top of the market? Do you continue to look at Eugenio Suarez or Alex Bregman if you can spend that much? Because right now, with the two moves that are made, payroll it's about right where it was with what they paid out last year. So any moves they make that add to payroll now, these are real additions. So I'm curious to see because if it's just these two bats, they kind of failed. Yeah. There's got to be some more. And that's not sounding greedy or anything like along those lines. That literally is just, that's what it's going to have to take. You can't just rely on your pitching to be the absolute best. You have to be able to score runs. And yes, Brandon Lowe and Ryan O'Hearn are two very nice additions. And they're to be commended for that. but that can't just be it. There has to be more. Not saying it has to be Eugenio Suarez or Alex Bregman, but it's got to be something. So what's the next step from here? Well, now that you got these two done out of the way before Christmas, wrapped under the tree, nice. Okay, great. What's next? What's the next move to be made?
Yeah, I mean, you need to look. I think now you need to look at third base.
Yeah,
and because shortstop, whoever's at shortstop is going to be a stopgap until Connor Griffin is there, and
he could come into spring training and just take it right away.
Right,
Like
so he could either take it right away. I see him as a Pittsburgh Pirate in 2026 at some point.
Yes, I agree.
Whether it's at the beginning of the season or in May or the All-Star break, he is going to be on this team this season. That's just the way I look at it. That's obviously just my opinion, but third base is the one position you have to address. And, whether you're going out and trading for, a guy like Alec Boehm from the Phillies, or you're, Kazuma Okamoto is a guy that the Pirates have been very linked to. I have been told that there have been multiple conversations there. So the interest is real for Okamoto. But there are a handful of other teams that are interested as well. The Angels, the Padres. So it's not like the Pirates are.
It's not a one-team race. Yeah.
Right. So, and there have been reports that he's traveled here to the US to have some in-person meetings as well. So, I don't know if the Pirates are having a meeting with him. I don't know if they're one of those teams, but there is interest there. And if they would get a guy like Okamoto to come in here, he's a power bat. He's a guy who has plenty of experience in Japan, and could make a pretty big impact in the middle of this lineup too. So, if you get him, I think that's when you're like, okay, like right now they're executing the plan. They've done some things to start the execution, but it's not over yet. The job's not done. And I think they know that. I think the Pirates are obviously they're interested in him. They're interested in other guys. Like they want to continue adding, which is obviously a great sign. They're doing exactly what they should be doing at this point.
Yeah, I think when we first started talking about when this show first started back up, and we started talking about this, I think we kind of landed on they need 3 bats.
Yeah,
and they got 2, so they've got Lau, they've got O'Hearn. Okay, great, good place to start. Now, looking at what they are at now, when you look at them getting the password, look at getting Mangum in. Okay, some nice, intriguing younger players. I won't say younger with Mangum, but younger at least in experience. Mm-hmm. Getting some of those guys that can come in and compete. You still need a third baseman, like you said. You still need a third baseman. I don't love the idea of Jared Triolo and Nick Gonzalez on the left side of the infield on opening day. I don't like. That's not a playoff team to me. So you got to get a third baseman. You got to get a guy who can really. I'd still go for Pop. Now I would take. I don't think it's going to happen at all, but I would take Alex Bregman in a heartbeat. I would love to have Suarez's Pop, but in terms of what Bregman can do, not just with the bat, but the experience he would bring, the toughness. You talk about a tough guy, the toughness that he would bring. I think that would be a phenomenal signing. I think that would be this is a great Pirates offseason. But even if it's not either one of those guys, if it is Yokomoto, if it's just something, you got to get another impact player to play over at third base. And then when you're looking at potential, okay, maybe if everything goes right, we get this third baseman, whoever it is. And then you go into spring training. Connor Griffin comes in and just absolutely he pulls Jared Jones. He just goes in and gives everybody just every reason to be like, all right, we have no choice but to put him on the roster. Then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I feel a lot better about this team now. I feel a lot better because if you put that along with what they can do on the mound, all right, I feel a lot better. So yeah, I agree. I think third base is the spot to go. If you had to choose of any of the potential options between Suarez, Bregman, Yokomoto, Boehm, any of these guys that we've talked about or anybody we haven't, who would be the most likely addition? Would you think Yokomoto at this point?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, it's tough when you're, especially like you went out and you got Ryan O'Hearn. He wasn't as sought after as I think Okamoto is in terms of suitors. Like, I mean, when you're having to go up against those West Coast teams, and even a team like the Padres that
It's tough.
yeah, and so it's not going to be easy for them to land them, but I think it would make sense. Like it's a good fit, and to me, Alec Boehm makes some sense too, depending on what the
you'd have to give
return
up.
would have to be. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you're already pretty thin now on in terms of
you're not giving up any more starters.
Yeah, you're dipping into that prospect pool. Like that's what that's going to be if you're acquiring an Alec Boehm, and I don't know exactly what the Phillies would want in that type of deal. So you're not even just looking at the prospect pool. Like you're probably looking at some of your top 10 prospects, I would assume.
I remember seeing something really early in the offseason. I saw something along the lines of the Pirates being connected to the Rangers for Josh Young.
Mm.
And I got to say, with where they're at right now, with Lowe and O'Hearn, like if there was any possible way that could happen, I don't feel like that's a good enough move. I just don't.
With getting young.
Yeah, if they were to get Young, I don't feel like that's a good enough move. I mean, Young, he's an all-star. He was a first-round pick, but he's had issues staying healthy. Number one, and number two, it's that inconsistency. He's not reliable enough. I mean, he's a decent hitter, but he was kind of brought in to be like a bat first guy, and the good thing is that he's a pretty good defensive third baseman, which is good on top of that.
Mm.
But like last year, I mean, his OPS plus was literally 100. He was right at league average. His career OPS is 724, but last year was 684, so it wasn't great. I mean, his career best OPS is 781. I'm just like, he had 23 homers in 2023, but I don't feel like that'd be a good enough move. I really feel like it's got you've got to put the big money down on the table for Kyle Schwarber. And I understand that you spent $29 million on O'Hearn. You spent, what is it, $11.5 million on Lowe. Okay, get that. But if you're willing to spend $120 million and you just spent, for 2026, you spent what, 25, 26?
Yeah. 25. 26.
Yeah. I mean, now you were willing to offer Schwarber 30. So, and that wasn't going to be your only addition.
Right.
So, yeah, you got to get somebody else. You got to get somebody who would be a bigger impact than something like that. I'm just bringing that up as another, like if somebody were like, well, they could trade for Josh Young with the Rangers. I'm like,
And that's the thing too, is, they might have to go the trade route because the third base market for, in terms of free agents isn't very strong. Like,
no, well,
you got Suarez, you got Suarez, Bregman, Okamoto, and
there's not much else.
Right. And with, them already making, 2 trades and dealing Oviedo and dealing, Burrows, like those are 2 guys that you're kind of looking at being, back of the rotation type of arms. So, you still, there's still a strength there in terms of pitching, even down, on the farm and what they have in terms of some pitching prospects and even some position players prospects. They're getting stronger in that regard as well with, guys like Florentino, guys like Valdez, so, but yeah, I mean, it depends on the return in terms of those trades. Like, does it make sense to, go out and trade for a guy like Alec Boehm? He's going to provide some plenty of offensive production. He's not the biggest power bat. I think he's probably, I don't know how many he hit this past season, but I'd say like around like Ryan, he's like Ryan O'Hearn type of power. I would think like 15, 20 home runs per year.
He had 11 last year.
11. Okay. He had like 280 something last
year.
But
he hit 20 in 2023.
Right. So like, yeah, 15, 20 home runs is kind of what you would, get from him. Mm-hmm. So, and Martin brings up, maybe Termar gets traded,
yeah.
maybe Nick Gonzalez gets traded. Maybe that makes him expendable with Brandon Lowe coming in. You know, like there are options here, but I think now you kind of get to the point of the offseason where it's like, okay, we've made some moves to actually improve this lineup.
Yep.
And, you know, credit where it's due. You got to give Ben Cherington credit for going out and you know, taking some risks in a sense too, because Brandon Lowe, you know, there's some injury history there too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's not like it's a, you know, given that he's going to play 140 plus games or, you know, whatever the case may be. Obviously, you know, you hope that's the case, and you know, I think he's a guy that you can, you know, it is reliable enough in terms of his production to for this trade to be worth it. But you know, yeah, there's still work that needs to be done here, and I think it's all on that third base position, because you know you can kind of work around everything else, but now it's the part of the offseason where it's all right. Well, what's next here at third base?
Yeah, I agree with that, and you know, to emphasize your point, it's been like last time we talked, you got to get something done. Well, something's been done. They brought in 2 bats, and again, to be commended for that. But now it's about what's next. Now it's about actually adding on. Now, like, I understand, like, you know, you think Lowe and O'Hearn, okay, great, the lineup's better. Well, think about what was parted with to create the room to be able to add those players. You know, you traded away David Bednar, you traded away Brian Hayes, you know, you traded away some money to clear some room for that. Any moves from here on out, from now on, really are real additions, like additions to the payroll. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens from here on out. But either way, when we talk next time, it will be a completely new year. It will be 2026. So we'll be back next week to talk about possibly nothing that's transpired since then, but maybe, just maybe, Ben Cherington will have pulled off another move, and we'll talk about it. But either way, we'll be back next week to talk about the latest happenings with the Pirates. So we'll catch you then. Thanks.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah.